Hello, thank you for coming to my presentation. My name is Katsuki Yokoyama, a graduate student in Japan, and I have been working as a counselor too. Today, I will introduce a part of my ongoing study. In the study, I've been considering a therapeutic conversation of the counseling, focusing on the perspective of the middle voice. What is middle voice? First of all, to my understanding, grammatical voice is divided into active voice and passive voice in today's language and grammar. I don't think it's necessary to explain the general understanding of them. However, in the old language, there was a different distinction which consists of active voice and middle voice. A famous linguist, Van Benist, defined the original meanings of active voice and the middle voice, like what I'm showing on the right slide now. But it is too difficult for me to explain enough in this short video. However, some Japanese researchers have recently made a new explanation referring not only previous study in Europe, but also studies based on Japanese language. The explanation is like that the middle voice represents the absence of an agent of action and force of circumstance. According to another researcher's explanation, the middle voice could describe an event without implication to indicate the agent of action. As I had known their discussions, I came to think that it seems to be useful to consider the use of language from such perspective in order to understand and practice the therapeutic conversation of the counseling. And I started to observe and analyze the expressions of a skillful counselor in real counseling in Japanese. I'll explain how meaningful it could be, showing one example. In Japanese language, omou is a verb whose meaning is think and is a form of active voice. When the verb form changed into omowareru, it becomes a middle voice. The counselor I observed seems to use omowareru, the middle voice version, rather than omou, the active voice one, when he asked to a client about his or her thought about something they were talking about. In Japanese, these two forms, omou and omowareru, have different nuances. Active voice version has a nuance that the subject thinks something with her or his own intention as agent of such action. On the other hand, the middle voice version potentially has some ambiguous meanings. And one of the typical meaning here, it implies a kind of spontaneity. So the nuance of the verb becomes like one thought came to one's mind through the circumstances without his or her own intention. Comparing these two versions, the active voice version, the question might take on a tone of pressing and requesting correct, appropriate answer. On the other hand, in middle voice version, the question becomes like, what kind of thought came to you through the conversation, and reduces a tone of blaming and pressing. It seems that some skillful counselors devise their expressions and language to include tone of the middle voice to invite the person to tell their experience without feeling being blamed. I also observed that the person came to talk about something they couldn't have before through counselors adjusting the questions. It seems to provide safer spaces for the persons who are easy to feel guilty and self-blame. I think the perspective of middle voice indicates that there is room for consideration about the counselor's use of language. I think it is very important for us. In the end, I think this topic may be related to the practice of narrative therapy. To my understandings, the idea of externalizing conversation of narrative therapy seems to try to use non-blaming language by not to place the person in the subject position grammatically. I think the perspective of middle voice shares common points with it. That is my further interest. Thank you for hearing my presentation. Bye.